I've clicked onto the global tropical overview for March the 29th, 2024. As is always the case in these videos, the thought expressed here are mine alone, and in making decisions ahead of any tropical cyclones, look to their local office, local emergency management, and local tropical cyclone warning center. We have our same system active right around Madagascar today. This is what was Tropical Cyclone Gamane. It's no longer a tropical cyclone anymore. The system has lost really all convective organization. Really, we just have this burst here north of the island, but the low-level center is also very weak now. It's spent quite a bit of time over northern Madagascar and has actually come off the northwestern coast. Not really anticipated by models, but this was a possibility given the area of high pressure pushing it off towards the general west direction in the low levels. But now the system is going to be turning again towards the southeast and will eventually come offshore still, like we talked about yesterday. But the system is now much weaker than models really had anticipated as the system came offshore, even more so than yesterday. And it's possible that the system just does not regain tropical cyclone status at all once it comes offshore. One of the main difficulties is now that as the system is very weak, once it passes through this part of the island, there's some pretty high topography in the center part of Madagascar, and that may just be it for the low-level center. We see this particularly in islands like, the Dominican Republic and Haiti in the Atlantic basin, to where you have storms that could go through the high topography of there, and they typically get ripped to shreds because of just the high topography of those island mountains. I don't know if it's the exact same way here. I don't know how high the terrain is here in northern Madagascar, but it is still pretty significant, and it could cause even more significant disruption to the center. It's even possible that the whole center just completely dissipates away with the high topography, and it would have to just build an entirely new one when it comes offshore. So you can see the GFS is still showing the potential for the system to be a tropical cyclone when it comes offshore. It does appear to have maybe a bit too strong of a low coming offshore of Madagascar there. I think the GFS is on the more bullish end for scenarios for this storm. I'd say the odds of it being a tropical cyclone, or becoming a tropical cyclone rather when it comes offshore, are fairly low right now, and even now the Meteo France forecast does not show it becoming a tropical cyclone at all. But the potential is still there for it to do so. It may have a little pocket of low wind shear that may allow it to briefly become a tropical storm. But as the system comes southeast towards Mauritius and La Reunion, wind shear is going to increase as this area of high pressure east of the storm begins to try and push it south in a really complete opposite direction that the upper level winds are starting to steer it. So you can see here on the GFS, it just starts to slow down, and the vorticity signature there, or spin, begins to weaken quite considerably. And then as this area of high pressure builds, it starts to go back towards Madagascar. But the good news is the environment is still going to be unfavorable, so not really looking at redevelopment on the way to Madagascar here. You may notice that the GFS is no longer showing a track continuing southeast of Mauritius and La Reunion compared to yesterday. That has been a trend on the GFS. It has gone more towards the Europeans' idea, likely because the storm is much further west here, maybe a bit slower as well here in Madagascar, and it allows more time for this pattern here southeast of the island to evolve. And right now the consensus is that this system will be turning around before it makes it to the islands of Mauritius and La Reunion. But like I talked about yesterday, it could still bring some enhanced rainfall to the islands, as when the storm is here, all the shear is going to be pushing the thunderstorms towards the south and east, towards these two islands, and that could still cause some thunderstorms that could have maybe some gusty winds and heavy rainfall there, and that could lead to some localized flooding issues. But in terms of anything really big here, really those odds of anything really significant have gone out the window entirely, and we really lucked out here on this storm. Fortunately here, and hopefully that's the last one of the season, as it is getting towards April. We can still have storms in April, but we've gone past the peak of the not hurricane season, but cyclone season. So maybe we can get away without any more significant storms before the cyclone season ends. Well, we can hope. Here's the current forecast from Meteo France, and you can see what I just talked about here, having the storm come over the high topography of Madagascar and not having any redevelopment into a tropical cyclone as it comes towards Mauritius and La Reunion and making that U-turn here towards Madagascar. Unfortunately, this could potentially bring some increased rainfall to the island if it does make it back towards Madagascar, though the upper level winds are going to continue pushing all the storms off towards the southeast, so hopefully that'll keep all the heaviest rain away from areas that don't need it anymore in northern Madagascar. But that's all that I've got for Gamane. But looking towards the future, where are we going to look next for tropical development? And we're going to shift our focus east again towards Australia. This is the forecast from the GFS ensemble of the Madden-Julian Oscillation, which is basically an area of rising air which is favorable for thunderstorm development moving across the planet. And you can see here in this plot, this forecast is for it to enter regions 3 and 4 on this plot. And this region is in the southeast Indian Ocean around Australia going towards the western part of the South Pacific Ocean. And you can see this here in the GFS ensemble plot. I'll go to the zoomed in part of this map. And this is basically showing you a similar thing, but in a map form, where the red here is sinking or dry air, not favorable for thunderstorms, and green is rising air, favorable for thunderstorm development. And you can see as it enters regions 3 and 4, as we get into early to mid-April, we have more green showing up here in Indonesia and near Australia. And this might allow for some potential for increased tropical development along this part of the world. And you can see this in the Climate Prediction Center Extended Range Tropical Weather Outlook, showing you the potential for some form of tropical development here as we get into week 2 and week 3, which is into early to mid-April. Though those odds right now are not really too high. They're only about 20% or greater than that, but less than 40% right now. But it is something to watch for. Like I said, with the Southwest Indian Ocean, we have passed the peak of cyclone season, which is typically in February and March, but you can still have storms in April, and it's important that you don't completely let your guard down. Last year was a prime example. We had a Cyclone Ilsa come in as a Category 5 storm in April into Western Australia. Of course, I'm not saying it's going to happen this year, but it's just a reminder that you can still have some significant activity here, even into April, in the latter half of cyclone season. Well, we've really only got about a month left of cyclone season to go, and then we're going to start talking about hurricane season in the Atlantic and East Pacific, and I plan to have some discussion videos going on as we get towards April and May about particularly the Atlantic hurricane season, as it looks a little bit interesting this year, maybe getting towards an active hurricane season on the horizon. So make sure you're preparing if you're in the Atlantic or East Pacific. But again, yeah, we'll be watching for the Southern Hemisphere over the next month just to make sure we don't have any big storms going on there. That's all that I've got for today. Stay safe in Madagascar, Mauritius, and La Reunion as Gamane comes through. That's all for today. Thanks for watching.